Further tension in the South China Sea, where China is accusing the Philippines of intruding at the disputed Scarborough Shoal. Beijing also claims one of its ships was rammed, prompting a response with water cannons. China's Coast Guard says more than 10 Philippine ships were spotted around the shoal on Tuesday. The incident comes a week after Beijing declared it would turn the shoal into a nature reserve, drawing strong opposition from the Philippines and Taiwan, who also claim ownership.
For Coast Guard hulls circling a single U.S. aircraft carrier. One of them, numbered 3104, cut so close the Nimitz-class ship had to alter course. That has never happened before. A vessel built for law enforcement just forced the largest warship afloat to maneuver. What does that signal about Beijing's playbook? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great! Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. If one Coast Guard cutter can challenge a supercarrier, what comes next? Missiles, ramming, or something far more subtle? Stay here, because this clash in the South China Sea is about more than navigation. It's about the boundaries of power itself.
Video has emerged of a Chinese Coast Guard ship blocking a Philippine patrol vessel. The Philippines says it was carrying out a routine patrol, but China says the area is part of its territory. The two ships nearly collided in disputed waters in the South China Sea on Monday. This comes as the Philippines and the United States are wrapping up their largest ever joint military exercise.
A ship built for law enforcement making the most powerful warship on Earth turn. How does that even happen? One vessel, Hull 3104 of the China Coast Guard, forced a U.S. Nimitz-class carrier to break formation and change course. That's not rumor. That's a physical maneuver that played out in contested waters, and it rattled commanders watching it unfold. Picture the scene. The supercarrier pushed through the South China Sea, its flight deck loaded, its escorts arrayed like bodyguards. A pair of U.S. destroyers flanked the giant, while a cruiser held station, feeding radar coverage in a wide arc. On paper, nothing crosses that wall of steel. Yet in tight waters, paper assumptions vanish. Hull 3104 pressed forward, sliding across the carrier's path until it barely cleared bow to stern. The choice was brutal: swing the rudder, or face a collision. Think about the mismatch. The U.S. warship is 100,000 tons of armor and aviation, a floating city bristling with jet fuel and ordnance. Hull 3104, by contrast, displaces only a fraction of that. But in that moment, size didn't matter. Space mattered. The carrier simply had nowhere to go. Just as wolves overwhelm a bull by biting from the edges, Coast Guard cutters can box in a giant by cutting off escape routes. Carrier groups are trained to fight in open seas. Lines of destroyers spread sensors, submarines patrol the deeps, and combat air patrol circles high above. That model assumes missile strikes or torpedo runs. It does not assume a white-painted Coast Guard ship pulling in close enough to scrape paint. Naval rules of engagement are clear when faced with hostile frigates or attack aircraft. They are not clear when the challenge comes in the form of a civilian-marked cutter.
And Donald Trump has posted online about moving to nuclear submarines.
President Trump says he's ordered the deployment of 2 U.S. nuclear submarines to the appropriate regions.
A threat was made and we didn't think it was appropriate, so I have to be very careful. So I do that on the basis of safety for our people.
And this is where the tactic bites. If the carrier had stayed on course and rammed, the collision would have killed sailors and sparked a rush of global headlines about American aggression. If the carrier fired, that would have meant instant escalation into naval conflict. So the safer call was to yield ground. That decision bought momentary calm, but at the cost of precedent. For the first time, a non-military vessel forced a U.S. supercarrier to maneuver in contested waters. That's what makes this more than maritime chess. It's gray zone warfare played in real time. Coast Guard crews are not Navy, and Hull 3104 is not counted in order of battle. Yet in the chaos of that encounter, Beijing gained tactical leverage without ever risking a direct clash of warships. The carrier moved. The cutter held its line. That visual, captured on radar and radio logs, will be used again and again as political currency. You can see the logic. Smaller ships dart in packs, forcing the carrier group to waste focus on navigation instead of projecting power. They can shadow, harass, block, and create legal cover stories framed as law enforcement. To you it may look like ships jockeying for space. To commanders, it looks like a net tightening around freedom of maneuver. The decision-makers on the bridge knew all too well the calculation. Stay rigid, collision risk. Fire weapons, escalation risk. Turn away, reputational risk. 3 choices, all bad. That is the genius of the tactic, it loads risk entirely onto the larger force. One move and you look reckless. Another move and you look weak. Every path is a trap calibrated by design. What's chilling is the precedent it sets. If Coast Guard cutters can back down a supercarrier, then oil rigs, fishing boats, and survey vessels can do the same on a smaller scale. Each encounter may feel like a nuisance, but stitched together they shift the balance of power. Gray paint replaces gray hulls. Water cannons stand in for gun batteries. And yet the effect is just as binding. Understand this moment for what it is, conventional superiority neutralized by unconventional tools. The aircraft carrier didn't lose its engines or its fighters. It lost ground because the rules of the game were rewritten on the fly. What would you do in that captain's chair, hold course, fire, or yield? Comment your choice below. But don't think this clash was isolated. This same playbook is spreading, from Philippine patrol vessels to disputed fishing lanes. Each confrontation extends the boundary line farther out, one cutter at a time. Meanwhile, the superpowers keep staring each other down, but the real shift is happening in the shadows of these civilian encounters. The South China Sea is no longer just fleets aiming missiles across open water. It has become a contested zone where white-hulled cutters and water cannons now decide movement and control. Each encounter chips away at the old assumption that only carrier groups hold dominance. So the question becomes yours: should the United States and its allies answer with direct military deterrence, or should they counter these gray zone tactics in kind? Comment your choice below. Subscribe and join a community that studies how power now shifts not only with carriers and missiles, but with legal claims, civilian fleets, and pressure.